I've been pulled through time between the past and the present and the future.
Everything is turning to
That's right.
Don't overthink it.
Around and around we go. All right.
Again.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Loki Season 2, Episode 4 trailer video. There's a whole bunch of brand new footage and Easter eggs, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. There's a bunch of really big stuff coming up. We also have Invincible Season 2 episodes in a couple weeks. I'll be doing episode videos for that. That'll sort of like replace Loki after Loki is done. Careful for spoilers for everything through episode 3 if you haven't seen it yet, but Victor Timely Kang you see here visiting the TVA, learning all the things about the TVA manual he's been reading, and all his ideas are turned into real things, even though he's a variant of He Who Remains now. They wanted to make it very clear during the episode when Sylvie was about to kill him, like he made this impassioned plea to her that he's become a totally different type of person. I can make my own choices. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be exactly like this other guy that you just killed that you think that I am. That was also meant to show how Sylvie has grown too, that she didn't just like immediately stab him through. He also made the same speech to her that she'd been making to Renslayer in Season 1 since she was a little girl. Like, why have you been persecuting me my whole life? I'm a totally different type of Loki. I'm not like these other bad Lokis that you've been pruning and sending to the Void Planet.
What was my Nexus event? It was enough to take my life from me and lead to all of this. Must have been important.
I don't remember.
She recognized that and was like, oh, you are different. You could potentially be a good Kang, so I'm not going to kill you. But now they're also saying that most of the ideas in the TVA journal that inspired Victor Timely to come up with all these new ideas are the same ideas that He Who Remains used when he created the TVA. So even though as adults they're very different people, they both came up with the same basic types of ideas. So it's sort of like getting to visit your dream. Like if you were a young inventor as a little kid and came up with these cool ideas, then you visited Wakanda and you're like, wait a minute, this is all real? This is amazing. So you have to imagine that Victor Timely is just happy to be here like, this is amazing. They also had that funny moment where they set him up as this huge fanboy of Ouroboros because he wrote the journal just like Casey. Like, oh, I imagine myself writing these letters to this person.
I like to think of it as a correspondence between myself and the visionary author, Ouroboros.
There's a scene of them meeting in the trailer. This person off screen is Victor Timely, and Ouroboros is also blown away because he recognizes him. He looks just like He Who Remains. Like, you're the guy that created everything. You're the one that brought me here. A lot of people also wondering if Ouroboros is like secretly a version of Kang just hiding out. I don't think that's going to be the case, but there might be a couple secrets behind who he is and how he wound up at the TVA. It sounds like the way they're setting it up, unless there is like some big twist that we're not seeing here, that Ouroboros was one of the very first people that He Who Remains brought to the TVA when he was creating it. Unless the show is lying to us, like misleading us, he's meant to be the main tech guy of the TVA, so he understands how everything works. He wrote the TVA journal, but a lot of it was based on He Who Remains ideas. Then it sounds like once they actually began creating it, Ouroboros came up with some of his own ideas and iterated on the technology himself. So a lot of the technology at the TVA was also created by Ouroboros, which is how he knew how to write the journal. So it just sounds like he is one of the very first people next to like Renslayer, Miss Minutes, and He Who Remains who actually started at the TVA. Because he wrote the journal and he created a lot of this technology himself after the fact, I think he's meant to be about as smart as the Kangs are. Even though Victor Timely is from the 1800s, the whole idea is that all the Kang variants are usually from the 30th century in the comics, then they travel back and forwards to different points in the timeline. What they might be doing in the MCU, though, is just changing that and just say that all the Kangs are born during completely different periods in history throughout the timeline, and eventually each of them rise to power in their own universes in their own way. Then they discover the multiverse at some point. So, like, eventually Victor Timely would have discovered the multiverse on his own if left to his own devices. Remember, in the original version of his timeline, he was meant to be He Who Remains, so He Who Remains eventually did find the multiverse in his original timeline, like we heard him talking about in the Season 1 finale. But in the Season 1 finale, this is interesting, this is where things get a little confusing, is he said that he came from the 30th century, so it might just be subtle variations in each version of the timeline, like when time reboots, he might be born during different periods in history just depending on what time loop they're on. But at some point, any of the Kangs that are on the Council of Kangs, they discover the multiverse, they eventually find the other versions of themselves, then they join the Council of Kangs, and the whole idea, as He Who Remains told us in Season 1, is that they share technology, making each other more powerful in their own universes, enhancing each of their own universes. So it's a little bit like a bigger version of He Who Remains going full Back to the Future 2 with the sports almanac, giving it to the younger version of himself to make himself more powerful, faster in the next version of the timeline. But that's also what created the Nexus event, causing him to turn into Victor Timely Kang, making completely different choices, turning into a completely different person. So it's a bit of a mixed bag doing things like that. There are moments like that in the comics too, with like the Iron Lad version of Kang who winds up being a good version of Kang who wants to work with the heroes and winds up rebelling against the other versions of himself from different parts of the timeline. A lot of people also wondering if like this young version of Kang here is what Iron Lad will eventually look like when he pops up in the MCU in some different form, in some different universe. We might see a version of Iron Lad at some point, but because we have Riri Williams, Ironheart, and a bunch of other Iron Man related stuff, they might just wait on that. But Iron Lad is a big Young Avengers character, and they are setting up Young Avengers in the background, heading up in like the next 4 or 5 years. Ironheart is going to be on that Young Avengers team, so I'm just saying that it would be weird to have like 2 Iron Man characters on the Young Avengers. Like you're probably only going to have one character. There's a new scene of Sylvie in one of her time portal doors, but everything around her in this universe is spaghetti and nothingness. I think either her McDonald's branch timeline universe has completely collapsed here, or is in the process of totally collapsing, and she's forced to go back to the TVA just to survive. During some of the other scenes, you see her back in the 1980s in this record store, and like everything around her is turning into spaghetti, so it just seems like the branch timeline that she's in is breaking down around her super fast in the episode. Loki and Mobius warned what would happen if they didn't fix the temporal loom, like the spaghettification problem would just continue getting worse and worse and worse, like you see in a lot of scenes inside the TVA with Loki turning into spaghetti in different parts of the timeline. That's why Victor Timely is here, because he created the temporal loom in the 1800s, but as he said, he didn't have the advanced technology he needed to make it work for real, even though the design was solid. Based on the model here, too, with him looking at it, it looks like for a second they might be asking Victor Timely to do the spacewalk in the more advanced mechanical pants, which is another callback to that joke from episode 3, these mechanical trousers don't work. Those might have been like a prototype idea for the spacesuits of the TVA. But here's the thing with that, you actually see Loki on the bridge without a spacesuit on. I think during the scene we're also supposed to see him whip out his full suit of armor and the massive full horns, like to protect himself. No idea why he's on the walkway to begin with without a spacesuit. Maybe something goes wrong when somebody else goes out here and he has to run out to fix it. Victor Timely also said that this device was his life's work. I think this device is the thing that they're supposed to add to the temporal loom that will help fix it. There are a couple of other funny moments with Sylvie inside that automat with the pie. It looks like Loki tries to get her to eat some pie and chill out. Eat some key lime pie, just have some fun. She says that they're not gods, and Loki's response is that they are actually gods, which is not wrong. They are the gods of mischief, so to speak. But even though it seems like they have Victor Timely, which is the person they need to unlock the systems, I think the idea is they won't be completely successful, or something else will happen, because in all the scenes from episode 1 where Loki jumps to the future on accident, I think those are meant to be scenes that we'll see in the eventual finale.
There you are.
Everything in the TVA looks like it's still breaking down, like the timeline is still collapsing, so it sounds like something winds up happening in the last couple of episodes. Either they're not successful in fixing the timeline, or it has something to do with what Miss Minutes and Renslayer are doing. Remember, they kept saying in the first couple of episodes that Miss Minutes has administrator access to everything in the TVA, like she can literally do anything in the TVA.
It was foolish of him to make an enemy out of someone who knows all his secrets.
Now that she considers herself an enemy of everybody there, including Victor Timely, she might just mess with it, because it sounds like she didn't even care about the TVA to begin with, like the TVA was a distraction from her and Kang just being together. Her real goal is to give herself a body and be with a version of Kang. Now, she wants He Who Remains to come back. That was the person that she was in love with, and she now recognizes that Victor Timely is a completely different person. Like, oh, you don't love me, and you're a completely different person, so screw you. Hell hath no fury like an AI scorned. So maybe Miss Minutes has something to do with everything going crazy like these last couple of episodes. It also sounds like they're trying to set up Renslayer as one of the villains for the last couple of episodes. But here's the thing. She actually wanted the TVA. She wanted to take over the TVA because she wanted to impose her order over the timelines. So if she wants it, but Miss Minutes doesn't care about the TVA, that might lead to some division in their ranks. Like, the enemy of the enemy is my friend, but only for a short period until they're at odds with each other. Miss Minutes might wind up betraying Renslayer at some point. So let me know in the comments, do you think that Miss Minutes will actually wind up getting herself a body Ultron style, and how are they going to end her story this season? Because Kevin Feige, this is actually a pretty huge deal. He said that there would not be a cliffhanger at the end of Loki Season 2. Hopefully that's not Kevin Feige saying they're not going to do Loki Season 3, because it would be cool to see them do a season set between Avengers Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars after the multiverse has started really collapsing. It's meant to set up Deadpool 3, Avengers 5, Kang Dynasty, and Secret Wars, so there'll be some connections there. Loki would have to ultimately save the TVA. It has to exist during the events of Deadpool 3. I do think that Renslayer will survive Season 2, though. I think they want to keep her around as a much bigger character. But we're only about halfway through the season, so there's still a bunch of stuff left to happen, so post all your theories in the comments below. My full Episode 4 video will post next week, just like normal. And big reminder, Invincible Season 2 episodes will start in a couple weeks. I'll be doing videos for that. I just did a big trailer video, so I'll post a link down in the description below. Click here for my full Loki Season 2 Episode 3 video, and click here to learn all about this huge deleted scene and storyline from Loki Season 2 of the Council of Kangs and this giant Kang multiverse war they were going to do. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.